I am interested in your experiences. I just want to know how thoroughly you've thought them through.
Yeah.
The clips we're going to watch in this video are not ordered chronologically, but from shortest to longest.
I have had experiences of God.
Can you tell me those experiences?
Yeah. I mean, I'm prompted to pray for someone, then learn later that that person is experiencing some extreme difficulty. Don't know why I suddenly felt that. I mean, there are
you care
these
about
things,
them.
I care about them, but I didn't know that they were.
Assuming Joe didn't misunderstand him, Joe's positing that the apparently random prompting Stephen received to pray for this unnamed person arose out of a general and natural concern for that person, implying that the timing of Stephen's prompting and the person's extreme situation that Stephen was unaware of was simply a coincidence. Now that's obviously possible, but it's prejudicially dismissive to simply and so quickly assume that, even if it's correct. But let's carry on.
I have heard non-audible voices. This has only happened to me a few times, but they've been words of guidance. And they were very distinct, very strong. Words that come into my head that I am immediately aware are not generated by my own thought processes.
How can you be sure?
Can't be sure. Except
why do you believe that?
I experienced it in a way that convinced me that something more than myself and my thinking was responsible.
Of course, that sounds insane to some people and rather relatable to others. Joe will later say of his own supernatural experience of a transcendent
realm of the impossible, of impossible beauty,
and
some sort of intelligence that's beyond anything you could possibly comprehend in our material realm.
While on psychedelics,
seems like the root of everything. It feels more real than reality itself.
Now notice that Joe and Stephen both give the same justification for the veridicality, that is, the realness, and interpretation of their respective experiences. That is, it just seemed that way. The nature of the experience impressed its apparent realness upon them. Many philosophers hold to what is known as the principle of credulity, which essentially says that, in the absence of special considerations, what one seems to perceive is probably so. In layman terms, one is rational to believe that, in the absence of evidence to the contrary, something is as it appears to be. Now, I'm neither going to defend nor even endorse this principle here, but it's a basic and important part of the topic of religious experience and epistemology. We move on.
The thing that I first experienced upon my Christian conversion was an experience of peace that I'd never had before, and an experience of outward-focused love and concern for other people that was completely and is completely contrary to all my natural inclinations.
I could see why adopting that thought would be very comforting, and I could see why adopting that. I mean, that happens in cults.
Manipulate their emotions.
And that there's things in the human brain where you can convince the human brain that it's having an experience whether it has it or not. If you're a young person and you're looking for some meaning to life, you can work yourself into a frenzy where you believe you have this experience with God.
So I'm condensing what was essentially a half-hour-long discussion on this into a handful of clips, but part of the context here is that Joe just relayed a story of a cult leader that manipulated people into thinking that they were having supernatural experiences. Now, that kind of experience rooted in self or social delusion is not likely something Stephen is unaware of, given that is common to human experience across religious and non-religious traditions, including some excesses that realize within some Christian contexts. Likewise, I know for a fact that Joe is aware of various martial arts cults and frauds.
If you hit someone hard enough with ki, which I will certainly not do today, you can stop the heartbeat. There's nothing she can do. Is there anything you can do? No. So they're going to come at me, and I'm just going to project a wave of energy out of my body to disable them, right? Say! For a moment, a wave of energy sweeps through their body, and they don't know where they are, what world they're in, what dimension they're in. One more time. Come at me. Come. Say!
But all because some martial arts moves are completely bogus doesn't in any way mean that all of them are. Although indeed we ought be cautious to avoid being deceived, be it by others or ourselves, we also ought be careful to avoid forming hasty generalizations. In fact, even if most martial arts techniques or most religious experiences are completely bogus, again, that doesn't entail that none of them are legitimate.
I'm not trying to conjure up something. It's just been something that has...
No one's accusing you of that.
Yeah.
I'm interested in your experiences. I just want to know how thoroughly you've thought them through.
Yeah. Well, I tend to overthink things, but
right.
But
with a particular goal in mind, perhaps.
Yeah, I want to know the truth. you know.
Right. But also you want a very particular truth that you seem to have experienced to be true.
Listen again to Joe describe his experience on psychedelics.
They're so profound and so transformatory. They're so transformational. You enter into a realm of impossible beauty.
It sounds quite similar to Stephen's experience of something transcendent and transformational. To be clear, I'm not at all saying that these experiences are the same, but why couldn't Joe's objections to Stephen be equally applied to Joe as well? Isn't the notion that there's a transcendent, infinite realm at the root of everything in which overwhelming beauty and an incomprehensible intelligence exists indeed a pleasant and comforting notion that lends meaning to our finite existence here on Earth? I'm not denying that Joe perceived things that appeared transcendent and supernatural, but to affirm that such things exist in reality, that his experience was indeed veridical, is a step beyond that. And I'm not even denying that either, but it's to that to which Joe's objections to Stephen apply to Joe as well. Moreover, motivated reasoning and other cognitive biases always have to be checked, of course, when earnestly searching for truth. But that doesn't mean that the truth is always unwelcoming. Not everything about Christian theology or the Christian life is exactly comforting or easy, by the way. Jesus had to pick up one's cross and follow him. Conversely, there are plenty of attractions that lead people to atheism, the New Age, political cults, and any other thing under the sun. This isn't a complete way of looking at worldviews, but every worldview offers something to somebody. Otherwise, you would never hear about it. Much more could be said here, but let's move on.
It's taken me by surprise sometimes that there's a subjective aspect to my faith that has seemed as real as the objective things that the scientist philosopher in me also regards as very weighty.
In this next clip, Joe is talking about his own psychedelic experience, but comment below if you do not think it could just as well be applied to Stephen's religious experience.
Well, anybody who hasn't had that experience that wants to diminish it or wants to somehow or another have a reductionist take, I think you've had a limited amount of experiences if you want to say that. Like I don't know how you could dismiss that without having it.
Yeah.
And here's something that Joe said that's a great note to end on.
Because I think sometimes when people do deal in science, these things that are not, you can't weigh and measure, they seem like a sort of complicated thing to discuss. That's why I wanted to know, like,
it's
how
part of the human experience, though, right?